Thank y'all. Good morning. So I'll be going up and down with my glasses. I'm at that age, so sorry. Well, I'm Dr. Rhonda Robinson, and I'm a pharmacist. And I've been treating people for about 25 years. I've done a lot of balancing of men and women's hormones. And I'm here this morning just to share with you some of my knowledge and to give you some alternatives for hormone therapy. And so I hope this blesses you this morning. Our objectives today is the key to hormone therapy is that we realize the importance of replacing only what we're missing. Okay, that's key. Don't guess. We need to know what you're missing. Then we need to find out what each person needs individually because it is so customized. You're going to be different from me, okay? And then we also need to know how balanced you are, okay? And I'm going to talk about all of those things today. The balance is what protects you. The balance is where you feel your best. So how do you know if you're balanced? What is a hormone? There are lots of hormones, okay? And today we're going to talk about the sex hormones, okay? But there's a lot of other hormones in the body, but they're all chemical messengers. They're a chemical substance produced in the body that controls and regulates the activity of certain cells and organs. Sounds pretty important, huh? Hormones are essential for every aspect of life, including the process of digestion, metabolism, growth, reproduction, and moods. Who all wants to be in a better mood? I know me. So these are the different types of hormones. There's actually more than this, but these are the ones that I do a lot of consultations with. So the sex hormones, which is what we're going to be talking about today, that's your estrogen, progesterone. We're going to talk about that. Thyroid hormones, adrenal hormones, insulin, and the neurotransmitters. These are the hormones in the brain that control your mood and depression. If you know of anybody with ADD, these neurotransmitters are so important to get balanced. And they're all talking to each other. You know, God didn't make your big toe separate from your eyelashes. He put us all together as one unique piece. So we have to look at the body as one, as a whole, and look at everything. There's not a one cure for everything, okay? You do it from different angles. And I'm sure you guys have seen this man. This is Henry Turner. He's the one that coined the term Turner syndrome. He described 7 patients between the ages of 15 and 23 who referred to him for dwarfism and lack of sexual development. That's where they termed Turner syndrome. Now, these are the common symptoms of Turner syndrome. With Turner syndrome, you not only have these symptoms that you're dealing with, but you've also got, these symptoms, okay? And we're going to talk about all this. This is a woman dealing with any kind of hormonal imbalances. So we look at headaches and hot flashes. You know, you can look at your teeth. The gums recede. Risk of cardiovascular disease. You know, with Turner syndrome, you're at a higher risk for cardiovascular problems. Backaches. The body and pubic hair becomes thicker and darker sometimes. Bone loss. Hair becomes thinner. The breasts are affected. The nipples become more smaller and flattened. These are all just symptoms of hormone imbalances. So you couple that with these symptoms: short stature, low hairline. These are the fold on the skin on the neck, aorta, constriction of the aorta, underdeveloped breasts. A shield-shaped thorax can sometimes happen. Elbow deformities, rudimentary ovaries where they are very premature, sometimes no cycles, Some people have a shortened metacarpal, the fourth metacarpal, small fingernails, and brown spots. So I threw these in there just to show you that, how much hormones really affect. These are 40 common symptoms of hormone imbalances. This slide is talking about menopause and perimenopausal symptoms, but let's face it, women with Turner syndrome are constantly in a perimenopausal state usually. Okay? These are symptoms that you can have: hot flashes, cold flashes, night sweats, clamminess, heart palpitations, irritability, mood. Should I get y'all all to raise your hand as you're having these? Trouble sleeping, irregular periods, low sex drive, vaginal dryness, fatigue, anxiety, depression, lack of focus, poor concentration, faulty memory, incontinence, itchy crawly skin, achy joints, tense muscles, sore breasts, headaches, digestive issues. A lot of times we don't think about the hormones dealing with our gut. It's interconnected. Headaches, bloating, allergies, weight gain, hair loss or thinning. Sometimes we get more facial hair. Dizziness, vertigo, body odors. Here's one that I had no idea it was hormones. Electric shock feelings. I am right in the middle of menopause. I started having that, and I do this all the time, and I found that, and I was like, oh my gosh. Tingling extremities, bleeding gums, burning mouth syndrome. Have you ever heard of that? Some women experience this horrible, their mouth just burns when their hormones are out of balance. Bad breath. Osteoporosis is very common with Turner syndrome. Weakened fingernails and ringing in the ears. I thought that list was important enough to read to you, go through all of those. Okay, so adults with Turner syndrome have excessive rates of osteoporosis, hypertension, which is high blood pressure, high cholesterol, and diabetes and insulin resistance. All four of these things play a part in the hormonal dance. All of these symptoms could possibly be secondary to the deficiency of your ovarian hormones. So this is why it is so important that we know what you need. This is a slide showing how the brain, the hypothalamus, the pituitary gland in the brain is talking to the ovaries, and then the ovaries talk to the bones, and they talk to the heart and the vagina and the breast and the uterus tissue. That's just a slide kind of showing that. Okay, let's get into what God gave you. There is only 3 classes of hormones. Okay? This is estrogen, progestins, and androgens. These are the 3 groupings. I'm going to skip that slide. Let's talk about estrogens first. We're going to talk about the role of estrogens. Why do we need estrogen? Why? Estrogen is vital to a woman's reproductive cycle. Estrogen contributes to the development of secondary sex characteristics, like your breast tissue. It regulates the menstrual cycle, prepares the uterus for pregnancy, develops and maintains the fallopian tubes, the uterus, and the external genitalia. It stimulates the stromal and ductal development in breast tissue. This is what starts where you start growing breast buds. Development of the endometrial lining. Increases skin vascularization to give you that smooth skin. Increases osteoblastic activity to maintain healthy bones. Helps rebuild your bones. Electrolyte balance in the kidneys. Lowers your LDL. Your LDL is your bad cholesterol, so that's good. You want to lower your bad cholesterol, but you want to raise your good cholesterol, which is your HDL, and this helps. The estrogen helps with that. Affects every neurotransmitter in your brain. It's the serotonin, the dopamine, the GABA. It uplifts your moods, affects more than 300 tissues in your body. It's pretty important. Reduces the incidence of heart attacks. These are all the positive roles of estrogen. Again, Turner syndrome, all 4 of these are affected. Now, here is where we're going to talk more about the bioidentical estrogens. God gives you 3 estrogens in your body. He gives the whole human race the exact same hormones, men and women. It just depends on how much of each we make. Like, we make more estrogen than men, and men make more testosterone than us, but we all make the same hormones. So there's 3 estrogens that you make: estriol, estradiol, and estrone. Now, most of you in the audience that are dealing with hormone replacement are just on one of these 3, which is estradiol, okay? And because that's commercially available. It's in a patch form and in a pill form and in a cream form. But estriol makes up 60 to 80% of all 3 of your estrogens in your body. It's a very healthy estrogen. It protects you from breast cancer. It's a very safe estrogen, but it's a really weak estrogen. I feel like estriol is very, very important to your hormonal health, and that's not available commercially on the market, okay? Estradiol, you make about 10 to 20% of the estrogens. It's the strongest estrogen, and it is the one that we typically draw levels on. And we would, at the end of the talk, I'm going to talk a little bit about saliva testing, and we look at that level there too. Estrone comprises only about 10% of all your estrogens. You really don't want a high dose of estrone in your body. 10%, it's very healthy and safe for you, but estrone also metabolizes down either to a good estrogen or a bad estrogen. And you just want to keep everything in balance. It's all about the balance act. This is a paper done about the safety and efficacy of estriol and how good it is in your body. The estrogen quotient, when we're talking about balance, you can even look at the balance between the estrogen and the progesterone, or we can look at the balance between all 3 estrogens. There's 2 ways you can look at all of this. I know with a lot of women that I work with, they've had moms with breast cancer or sisters with breast cancer, and sometimes they'll want to look at this estrogen quotient to see how well balanced they are, so it protects them to the, as well as we can from them metabolizing over to the negative estrogens. These are symptoms of low estrogen: forgetfulness, poor concentration, depression, fatigue, dryness, hot flashes and night sweats, irregular bleeding, osteoporosis, and urinary tract infections. Now we're going to talk about the second grouping of hormones, progestins. Okay, and I'm playing on these words because it's very important that you know the difference in the progestins. The body only makes one kind, progesterone. Ladies, this is the most wonderful hormone in the entire world. I think it saved my marriage. Progesterone is your happy hormone. It's very calming. It's secreted by the ovaries, the adrenal glands, and the placenta in pregnancy. In pregnancy, the baby's just swimming in it. When you were pregnant, how some of you may have been, maybe not have been, you're really sleepy and sometimes calm, and you don't have enough energy. That's because the placenta's making so much progesterone that it's making you very, very calm, okay? All right, progesterone's role balances estrogen. That's its role. It doesn't matter whether you've had a hysterectomy or not. You need progesterone. It balances the estrogen. It balances blood clotting. It's a natural diuretic. It elevates your state of well-being, makes you happier. It's very calming. It's a bigger bone builder than estrogen. It's about the balance for the bones. With Turner syndrome and osteoporosis, it's all about the balance. Lowers your LDL, that's your bad cholesterol, that's good. Reduces sugar imbalances. A lot of Turner syndrome deals with insulin resistance and sometimes diabetes. It plays a role in that. Improves your sleep quality. Increases your metabolism. And it produces a lot of brain protecting agents. It controls some of your neurotransmitters. Progesterone balances the estrogen primed endometrium by bringing about secretory changes. Okay, so this estrogen builds the lining of the uterus and progesterone organizes it and sloughs it off. That's its role. It does the same thing with the breast tissue. Estrogen builds breast tissue and progesterone comes along and makes it less dense and organizes it and makes it healthy breast tissue. That's the way it protects you against breast cancer. It's a big factor in libido, your sex drive. Progesterone is. Symptoms of low progesterone: acne, irregular periods, anxiety, arthritis, your joints hurt sometimes, weight gain, bloating, tenderness in the breast, loss of sex drive, mood swings, unusual food cravings, headaches, can't sleep, depression, hot flashes. So many times our doctors, you go to them, you're having a hot flash. First thing we're going to try to do is put you on estrogen. That's not always the thing to do. Sometimes you need to just be balanced with progesterone. Symptoms of low progesterone are cystic breast, PMS, huge, fluid retention, sugar imbalances, fibroids, heavy periods, nervousness, irritability, endometriosis, and thyroid imbalance. Progesterone is so healthy for the thyroid. Okay, so this slide's up here because you can see the chemical structure, okay? This is taking y'all back to chemistry, but if you look, progesterone is on the left side, medroxyprogesterone is on the right-hand side. Medroxyprogesterone is Provera, okay? And that is a one thing that the medical community has to prescribe to protect the uterine lining. If you will look, they're really not the same at all. But when you get into the pharmaceuticals, and me being a pharmacist, you cannot patent something natural, okay? So they have to change the chemical structure. And in the body, medroxyprogesterone helps keep the uterus thinned down and from getting hyperplasia on the endometrium. So, but on the rest of the body, it doesn't necessarily have great effects on the rest of the body. It does protect the uterus, but it does have a host of side effects that come with it. Now, natural progesterone has all your positives. You've got every cell in your body needs hormones. And it's good to put back only what is identical to what you're missing. I'm going to also talk about, a lot of you are on estradiol, which is in the patch, and prometrium, which is progesterone, which those are two good options for things that are commercially available. But there's more to this than just that, okay? But I wanted to just take the time to show you the difference between Provera and progesterone. Prometrium is progesterone. This is just a slide going over what we just... estrogens may eventually drop 40 to 60% below baseline levels. The effectiveness of progesterone therapy greatly depends on its balance with estrogen. The ratio of estrogen to progesterone is more important than the actual levels of the individual hormones. It's about the balance. This is a little bit about the menstrual cycle, how it works. A normal cycle can last between 24 and 35 days typically. The cycle begins at puberty, continues till menopause. Day one is the first day of spotting, And ovulation usually occurs mid-cycle, somewhere between the days of 12 to 14, and sometimes it may be 10 to 16. It's just that medium, that in the middle range is when ovulation occurs. This slide is showing a lot, but if you look at that red part in the middle, you see the first 2 weeks of the cycle. I wish I had a little pointer, but you'll see the first 2 weeks of the cycle being more estrogen and the second 2 weeks being more progesterone. And I show you that to show you how the body's constantly building the lining of the uterus and then breaking it back down and organizing it. It's about the balance. It's a simple, simple thing. It's just about the balance. As you can see, the cycle should occur in a balanced state, with estrogen being balanced with progesterone. If we're replacing hormones, we should replace with what is identical and make sure it's balanced. Let's talk a little bit about testosterone. Testosterone plays a role in boys and girls experiencing growth, a growth spurt at puberty, bone growth, increases libido, increases your lean muscle mass, increases metabolism, improves your mood, increases your energy. Reduced androgens, okay, so testosterone is an androgen. That's that third class of hormones we're talking about. Testosterone is an androgen, and it may contribute to low self-esteem with women with Turner syndrome. It's good to know what your level is. You may not need it, but you need to know if you need it. Females with Turner syndrome are deficient in ovarian androgens, that's your testosterone, such as testosterone, as well as estrogen, and have reduced muscle mass, which may contribute to osteoporosis and insulin resistance, which is diabetes. It can lead to diabetes. It's all about the balance. How do we know if we are balanced? It's not a guessing game. And I am a little disturbed with medicine sometimes because we guess too much. We go off people's symptoms instead of knowing that we know. I've been doing saliva testing literally for 25 years. I've compared it with blood testing. I spent the first 5 or 6 years doing blood testing at the same time I did saliva testing. And sometimes they would mimic each other, but most of the time they were opposite. Okay? So you need to know that, and I'm fixing to explain to you why. Hormones in blood are going to exist as two things. They're either going to be bound to a protein or they're going to be free to do whatever they want to do. The free hormones are the only ones that are available to be used by the tissue. Where do you feel everything? In your tissue. It's not in your bloodstream. You feel everything in your tissues. You need to know what your tissue levels are. Now this slide shows you've got these hormones that are bound to proteins. Okay, so that little green bar right there with that little blue triangle, that's a hormone attached to a protein. So the hormones are the little yellow square and the blue triangle. So as it's going through this blood vessel here, you see that some are free and some are bound up. So when we draw blood out of the blood vessel, we're getting both of those. We're getting the free and the bound. We need to know what the free is. That's the only thing that's going to go across that vessel and into your tissues. It's the free state is what is active at the tissues. Saliva measures the free hormone levels in the body. Serum, blood, measures the protein bound, the non-available. So it gives you it doesn't give you the full picture of what's going on. Serum is much less accurate measurement than that of saliva when assessing functional hormone levels. Hormone levels in saliva accurately represent the amount of hormone delivered to the receptors, that's your tissues in the bodies. There's that picture again, just showing it to you how the unbound is the only thing that can go to those cells. When blood is filtered through the salivary glands, this is how it works. The bound hormone components are way too large to pass, over to the salivary glands. Only the unbound hormone, the free state, the unbound, passes through into the saliva. What is measured in the saliva is the free hormone or the bioavailable hormone. That's what you need to know to see how balanced you are. Clinically, it is far more relevant to test the amount of hormones delivered to the tissues, as this is a reflection of the active hormone levels in your body. It's always recommended to evaluate a salivary hormone level before beginning any hormone replacement. Know what you're missing. Know what you're missing before we start putting it back. This is just a little picture of the little saliva tubes. Saliva testing is non-invasive. It's non-stressful. In those little tubes, they're color-coded according to the time of the day, and I'll have my patients spit 4 times throughout one day, and we'll get a daily average of all the hormones. And you can also test the cortisol levels in this. And this talk is not about adrenals, it's about hormones, but I'm going to touch on a little bit. Your adrenals is a gland that sits on top of your kidneys, and it secretes cortisols. Cortisols are really one of the master glands of the body. They control your thyroid, your immune system, your neurotransmitters. They control so many things, even your female hormones. So I test a lot of cortisol levels in women because they come to me and they'll have these symptoms. And this is how you'll know whether you might need to look at the cortisols. You will have an afternoon dropout of just exhaustion at 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So bad you could lay down and take a nap. You have some hair loss sometimes. Cold hands and feet is another sign of adrenal hormones. Mental fogginess. And your sleep patterns can be, you might go to sleep, but then from 2 to 4 you're restless and you're up and that mind's just churning. Those are all classic symptoms of you might want to look at your cortisol levels. And a saliva test can do that. It can test the hormones and the adrenals. Oral HRT, oral hormone replacement therapy, conventional oral hormone replacement. That's your estrase. Your Premarin. You don't see Premarin much anymore, thank God. But it's your estrase. It's not the best. It's not the best solution in Turner syndrome. The reports are not saying that it prevents. It may not prevent osteoporosis, and it may aggravate hypertension. But topically is opposite of that. Topically, the patch does protect you from those things. My patients, I put on a lot of creams. When we are doing hormone replacement, I'll combine all their hormones into one in the cream. And they love that, and it saves money. We're going to talk about that a little bit. The current conventional guidelines with the medical community now suggest using a transdermal estradiol patch at about age 11 to 12 in Turner syndrome. Transdermal, which means through the skin, such as a patch or a cream, that route is better than the oral pill to swallow because it bypasses that liver. Anytime you take something in by mouth, it goes through the stomach and through the liver. The liver eats a lot of it up and changes its chemical structure. When we put it through the skin, you don't have that liver metabolism, and you get more of what you need without more negative metabolites. So the lowest commercially available option you've got on the market is an estradiol patch of 14 micrograms. And some of the other brands are 25 micrograms. A patch, sometimes doctors will cut your patch to give you a lower dose, especially when you've got a child with Turner syndrome that we're trying to help go into puberty. And that we can cut the patch to, down to 3 to 7 micrograms. This is kind of what's recommended right now. It would be good to know exactly how much that patch is delivering to your body. If that's the way we're going to do it, we need to know, how much do you really need? I've been treating women for years. We're all so different. I've got women that need a hint, and I've got women that need a truckload. Advantages to bioidentical hormones. Now, bioidentical means they're identical to what the body made. And you might go, and we used to call it natural hormones. And you might go, well, it's not natural if it's not coming from humans. It's coming from plants, okay? And the plants make a lot of hormones. But we don't need all those. We just need those 3 estrogens. We just need that progesterone and testosterone. So it does go through a process to extract out just those exact chemical structures that you need. And that way it's not natural, but it is identical to what your body makes. So bioidentical hormones can be delivered via a transdermal route, by mouth, through a buccal cavity is under the tongue or in the cheek, vaginal routes. You can combine with bioidentical hormones everything into one dose. Depends on whether you're cycling or not, okay? If you're cycling, we would do it differently. We can individualize your therapy, customize it just for you. It's not just the one size fits all. Although insurance doesn't typically cover it. You're right, it doesn't. And that's a drawback. But typically the prices are not as bad as what you think. I was just talking to a lady out front. She's on a testosterone cream. She is on Prometrium and an estradiol patch. I said, what are your copays? And she said $20 to $30 a piece. Okay, and the testosterone, I guarantee, is not covered. So she's probably paying $40, $50, $60 for that. So, you look at the cost of all that, you're at $100 right there. So you can, depending on whether you're cycling or not, if you combine them all up, hormones can run you in the $50, $40 to $60 range. So sometimes they're not as bad as what you think. They may be less than your copays. Some obstacles you may come across with trying to do bioidentical hormones is finding a practitioner to work with. Sometimes it's hard to find because we are taught in medical school not anything about anything natural typically. We are taught about what's available on the commercial market because in defense of practitioners, this is all they have to give you. Okay, that is what they have. There's not a readily available compounding pharmacist everywhere. Okay, and that does make it tougher. So they're doing the best they can with doing the estradiol patch with the Prometrium. That is the best that they can give you. Finding a pharmacy to work with, that's tough too. A lot of them are not doing compounding anymore. Because of some new FDA guidelines. And that's okay. It needed to happen. But those are some obstacles you may come across. And the insurance doesn't typically cover it. Some other considerations to feel your best, more than just hormones, is your diet. What you're eating. That's everything. Exercise. Sometimes you need to look at the adrenals, thyroid, neurotransmitters. The insulin's important. Balance your gut. Your gut's the window into the body. You need to be having a BM once a day. Nice smooth move. No reflux. The gut is very important. The health of your gut is the most important thing. And of course I put exercise again. I must have liked that one. And prayer and meditation's important. It's all healing. So in summary, it's a simple solution. Very simple. Test your levels. Only put back what is missing. Use hormones that are identical to what the body needs. Balance, balance, balance. And then test your hormones again to see if they're balanced. How are you going to know? If you start out with a test, treat, and then test again to make sure it's the right amount for you. This is my information. We got a little booth right outside here. I did bring some saliva tests with me today. If anybody's interested in just knowing where their hormone levels are, I'd love to talk to you. I do consultations. We do phone consults, that type of thing. So distance is not an option. I've got people living everywhere that we mail things to. So I'd be happy to help any of you. I hope this has given you a different perspective on your options. There's other options. So I am open for some questions. Yes. Yes, there are several of them. Yes, and I brought one copy with me, but I can direct you on that and give you my information. Yes.
How does the saliva test? How is it affected by if you're already I'm on the ortho patch?
How would it affect it?
How do you know when you test what is from what you're already on?
Right. So you would want to test on what you're on. If you're happy with what you're on, you would want to, regardless, you would want to test. You could test with what you're on, okay, and then know if does it need to be tweaked? Does that patch need to have a little bit more in it? Does it need to have less? And are you on progesterone? Yes.
I have a question because I started out with the patch when I was originally starting HRT when I was 12 or 13. But then what happened was a couple of years later, they basically were finding my period to be irregular, I believe, because it was just the estrogen patch. So they immediately just put me on the birth control.
Yeah.
And I've been on that for almost another 15 years.
Right.
So now I'm wondering, because other friends of mine with TSSUS have talked to me about this too. I'm wondering because what's in that birth control pill that I'm taking, number one, might not be enough for me. Number two, like you pointed out, it's going straight to your liver. Should I have a talk with my doctor, my GYN back home, and talk to them and ask them, okay, I've been on this. Can I have other options?
Absolutely. And you may have to do some of your own research. You seriously may have to. The smarter you are, the better. You're in control of your health. In defense of the doctors, they're doing all they've got and what is current guidelines. But your periods may have been off because you weren't on progesterone. You just had a constant building on the lining of the uterus and no way to slough it off. And when you build a lot of extra tissue, then your bleeding will be erratic and all over the board. Right here.
Okay. I am 60 years old, and I'm now starting to have problems with arthritis, and I also am osteopenia. But getting tested for this hormone stuff, would that help with that?
It could, yes, definitely. There's other things too, but yes, it could. It could.
See, I have an appointment with my doctor when I get back into town, so I'll just reach out.
Okay. Yeah. And yes.
Thank you. I have already suffered liver damage, I believe, from a combination of the estrogen progesterone I was taking and statins that I was on. So right now I'm on nothing.
Okay.
Except for ursodiol thyroid medication. Would bioidentical hormones be safer?
Yes, if you want to do topical. Topical's always the best, guys. At 100% down. And saliva testing is the best way to test that topical. Yes, right here.
I'm similar with this lady situation. I'm over 60, maybe 62, and I went through mechanical menopause.
Okay.
Over 6 years. At the time that we were diagnosed, they didn't know enough that
Right.
we had the same option. In fact, I never heard this, but I was on progesterone
Right.
And I guess my question is, why is it, I think you said 40 to 80% of it?
60 to 80% is estriol, yes.
Why is that? You said they don't, why is that amongst the
It is. And I get that question all the time, and the answer to that is it's just not commercially available. Commercially available. It's not, a lot of practitioners don't have access to it.
why is it not available? Why is it not
You cannot patent something natural, okay? What they get a patent on is the delivery mechanism.
Which means are they getting money? Is that
Well, yeah, but they have to make, people, your comment about money, I agree with you because the pharmaceutical companies, but right, and I know what you're saying, and I agree with you, but thank God we have research and development. Really, thank God we do. Yes, the whole system I know is messed up, but thank God we do have research and development to find more things to help people. So it's a tough balance. It's about a balance. Yes, ma'am.
So I have a 10-year-old and almost 11, and I know that they've been talking to me about starting estrogen and whatnot. Is this something you do and we can use with someone as young as 11 or 12?
Absolutely. Yes.
And does your cream have the estriol in it?
Yeah, it can. Yes. Right. And we can pull that level too. We can pull an estriol level. And it might be something we want to add later. But the biggest thing, standard practice, I think, with Turner syndrome right now is to just start estrogen for a few years and then add progesterone later. Okay? I would just look at her levels.
Would you work with like an endocrinologist if you're not able to find somebody?
I would love to.
And then they would work with you?
I would love to, yes. Love it.
In my day, they monitored your FH and LSH levels before they started the progesterone.
That's right. They do. And that's the level secreted by the brain to tell the ovaries what to do, but you need to know what your tissue levels are. You had a question, sir?
Yeah, I was curious. You had saliva blood test, but I think you can 24 hours and get a whole lot of info.
You can.
I was just curious what you do with that versus.
And I am not a fan of the urinary metabolites because you're getting all metabolites. And that is not telling your tissue levels either. That is telling what the kidneys have put out. Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
I have a 12-year-old, and we've kind of been putting off because they want to do the estrogen patch, and I just feel like she's just not there yet. But is there waiting too long to start that, or what is the age that really is best?
That is something I think we need to work with the doctor. I think I would want to know what her levels are. And if we're dealing with breast development, and estrogen helps with that, and that's the reason we go on that, you can do a tiny dose without overdosing her, and that's what you need to know is what she needs and keep it safe. In the back. Yes.
Kind of related to what someone asked earlier, how do you transition from the commercially available hormones to bioidentical?
That's a great question. And, when I am doing consultations with patients, we have to map it out. You got to look at each individual person and what's the best for them. It depends on their symptoms, a lot of things. I'd use a lot of different ways to do that. Sometimes it's good to just start out and test and see what is off and then start undoing or improving on. And it may require a couple tests.
Is it usually cold turkey from the take them off of all conventional?
No, you're never going to try to, you want to make a smooth transition. Yeah, we don't want to make you feel worse. We need to figure out what's going on and kind of work with it and come up with a plan of action. It really takes some time to kind of map that out and plan it. So, yes, ma'am. Yes.
I just wanted to say something to the two mothers that were talking about their children. I'm 38 and didn't get to start, growth hormone until later. It was fairly new, so they didn't start growth hormone when you were 2 or 3, And so I had to get all the growth I could out of it, and they didn't put me on the birth control I was taking for replacement until later, which means I was developing way after all my friends. And I do think that that is one of the more awkward things about having Turner syndrome is feeling like, oh, all my friends are going through this, but I'm not.
Right.
I hear what you're saying about low dose and keeping it safe. I'm just trying to put a little support behind there.
Awesome. Yeah.
The kids are saying to their grandma.
Thank you. Yes. Yes, ma'am. In the middle.
Again, kind of echoing the support there is you really do want to know what her levels are and stuff, but I know for me, socially it was awkward to be 12, 13, 14 and not matching the development level, let alone the growth level of my peers.
Sure. Yeah.
When I got diagnosed finally at 14 and a half in the middle of my freshman year, I finally was put on like a 0.5 level of estradiol to be able to knock puberty into me. But for your daughter, maybe consider also the social aspect. Social aspect there of wanting her to feel socially normal as much as possible.
Right. Right. Absolutely. And that's what this is all about. Yes, ma'am.
I'm curious as to, you spoke of like a transition for somebody that's been on the patch and on prometrium. So you could measure my levels and those levels could be fine, but maybe you find I have, because there's 3 estrogens, which I never knew before.
Right.
So maybe I need one of those others, but my patch is doing well. How do you transition somebody who maybe I want to have a cream, all-in-one cream?
Right.
How time-wise did you suggest that?
Time-wise, as far as how long it would take to transition
How
you?
long do you say, okay, use the cream for a week, use the patch for a while?
Well, I wouldn't give you both at the same time. Yeah, I would calculate in my head what you're on according to what your level is, and then add 2 as we went. I mean, there is, with bioidentical hormones, guys, it is not a do this. You got to listen to that patient and what the issues are, because everybody's a little different, and it's.
Now, you follow somebody that if I was to become a patient, then you would be in contact and you would.
Right.
Okay. And then how often do you recheck people?
Depends. I mean, I like a saliva test, like a normal. I won't say normal. None of us are normal. A typical, perfectly balanced woman, okay, with no issues. I still want her to test once a year because that's important. You are doing bioidenticals to protect yourself. Do the insurance policy and get a saliva test. It's just a good measure. You need to know that. So at the beginning, sometimes it takes a little bit more testing. But I try, when I'm working with a patient, I try to be as economical as we can and kind of map it out and see, okay, do we want to start this and then test? Or do we want to test on the front end and then start, so depends. Don't mean to be vague, but it does. Yes, ma'am. Yes. Sorry. I'll do her and then I'll do you.
So for diabetes, it runs in my family, and my sister has been diagnosed a couple years back. And I was wondering how the hormones and the diabetes are affected. And I know that I'm personally not in the best shape, I think, hormone-wise. So I don't know if it could lead to diabetes if I don't do anything about it.
Great question. Yes, insulin and progesterone and your sex hormones and your thyroid hormone are all interrelated. If you are dealing with insulin resistance issues, get your hormones balanced. It's very important. We need to look at the adrenals. We really need to look at the adrenals. I need to talk to you about what to eat. Okay? Things like that. Sometimes, I mean, my dad had diabetes. He doesn't have it anymore. And all we did was change his diet and clean out his liver. So, it can be done. Yes, ma'am. Sorry. Okay, go ahead.
Well, for some of us, like I'm 56, and even when we get past that point of being on it, testing me, how important still is it to be testing your hormone levels just for your general health?
In my opinion, till you die. And here's why. Because at what point do you want to kind of shrivel up? I mean, the hormones are protecting your brain. They're your vitality. Age sets in, when the hormones start to decline. We all know that. That's when we start getting more diseases and things. It's the decline in the hormones. Are we trying to keep you 20 forever? No. But if you just are balanced in a healthy state to protect your bones and your heart, and the breast tissue and all of that, it's key. Yes, ma'am.
How do you determine balance? Is it through symptoms, or do you have like ranges of, where you want to see the certain?
That's where that testing comes in, that saliva testing. And yes, you don't always chase numbers, but you listen to the patient and there's ranges you're going to look for.
Based on a standardized population, not a TS population.
Well, in my opinion, it's either one. Mm-hmm. It would be either one. With Turner syndrome, you still would want to be balanced. Yeah. Yes, ma'am. Finally got to you. Sorry.
When I was kind of in the same boat, I did not start any estrogen therapy until I was 16. And so I had it was like nothing, boom, hello.
Yeah.
And it was, again, way after my friend. I didn't have any problems with when I started the menstruation because all my friends had already had it. Well, having a daughter now through adoption, they're starting their periods so much sooner.
Right.
Which is scary in itself.
Right.
Because I had to start talking to my daughter about a period when she was in 3rd grade. And by 11, she was having a period just naturally. And my question with regards to our little butterflies is that is it the onset of puberty that brings upon those hormones to do that? Is that it? Or do they always have these hormones in them to the point where when is it a good time to introduce the estrogen? Because is it...
With Turner syndrome, right?
Right.
Okay.
Turner's, because I would think it would be a natural induction, so to speak, to do it when their peers are naturally starting to go through that process as well. I could be incorrect. That's just my thought process.
Mm-hmm.
But then, like at smaller doses.
Mm-hmm.
But my question is, do they always have that hormones going through, or is it the onset of puberty that sparks it? Am I making sense?
I think you're asking me, is puberty what causes your hormones to start working?
In a sense, yeah.
And yes, it is puberty that starts your hormones to working, especially when you start ebbing and flowing with the cycles. Okay.
So introducing that to our little butterflies at that natural progression when they would typically be going through that, is that the most beneficial in smaller doses?
I think so. That's the key with the little ones, with the butterflies. They probably need some estrogen, or do they? Know whether they need it or not, and then use small doses, start out with a tiny dose, and then kind of recheck, and we can work with your doctor as to when to start progesterone. I think it's good to start progesterone kind of I don't know that waiting 2 years is the greatest, just from my research on progesterone, but that's standard right now, and I'm happy to work with anybody on that and their doctor.
Because just piggybacking on some of, again, our experiences, yeah, it was very, and I'm not just talking socially because, we obviously
Right.
work through that, and we do.
Right.
But, knowing what their friends are going through, and then they're like, well, it hasn't happened. My friends were 12 and 13 at the time they were getting the period, and when I'm 14 or 15 and I still haven't, they're like, why?
Yeah.
And it's not that they were harsh or anything, but it was kind of like that. It should, I think, be a natural
Progression.
that then we don't feel so, we're not so far behind, and then those hormones can help actually, like you said, stimulate our brain function and stimulate the brain function, so maybe there are more
Natural progression of how they should be growing. Right. I agree.
years
I agree.
in that terms too.
Yes, ma'am. Now when we do it, it is calibrated, spot on. So like, when I prescribe my creams, a pump, depending on what dose I put in there, a pump is the exact measurement. So, right, you're not just guessing. That's right. It's not a guessing game. I believe my time's up. I am going to be right out here. I would love to talk to anybody. Thank y'all for having me.